Well, I guess we can kick this off. We've kind of hung out a little bit. So, well, thanks everyone for showing up. No, it's kind of a different area, different situation. So, we'll insert our little PrepperNet spiel. PrepperNet.com is actually or PrepperNet.net is the website for checking out and seeing what's going on in different areas. We post all of the events there. Also, there's meetup.com, and you can search PrepperNet San Antonio, and you'll find the same kind of information. I try to post everywhere and kind of make a blanket. As far as the sign-in sheet, we take the emails, and I send out the same email communications. Everyone's BCC'd on it, so you don't have to worry about everyone having your email address. So that's always good. Did you have any announcements you wanted to go over?
No, just as long as we got everyone signed in, I've got a survey for afterwards for everyone to fill out. It's nice we got something to take notes on. I was going to offer, I printed up a bunch of surveys. I was going to offer an extra one for notes, but this is good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect. So, in lieu of a projector, we get printouts. So I'm all for that. So, anyway. The subject for today is Bushcrafting 101. It's a very basic introduction into bushcrafting. As I was going through and kind of looking at my notes, I've been to a couple wilderness survival schools and bushcrafting schools. It's really tough to present how to do bushcrafting, especially in a conference room like this. I don't want to bring any fixed blade knives in. Don't want to start a fire, right there. That would be less than ideal. I don't know if we'd be able to come back after that. So I kind of expanded it into not just bushcrafting, but outdoor survival at a very basic level. The key takeaway is if you're going to do outdoor survival and learn those skills, you have to practice them. Unfortunately, watching YouTube videos or listen to me talk for 20 or 30 minutes doesn't really cut it, but it'll at least be a good jumping off point. So anyway, after that we can all talk, hang out, network, figure out all that cool stuff. So bushcrafting, let's see, that's the agenda. I don't think we'll have any problem with time. So anyway, what is it? It's the practice of skills, acquiring and developing knowledge and understanding how to survive and thrive, that very well used term, in a natural environment. So depending on the level of bushcrafting that you need, there are things such as foraging, tracking, hunting, trapping. Well, you guys can read. We're going to go over kind of the basic level. So we're looking at probably right around the first 72 hours when you're out in the woods. The interesting thing about bushcrafting is it's very different from most prepper level skills. And I say that because when you're into preparedness, a lot of people have bug out bags. They carry a lot of stuff with them. Bushcrafting is kind of the opposite, where you're taking 4 or 5 items in a little bag. I mean, that's probably half of what you'd need right there. And you go out into the woods and survive. So it's a very different take on survival. With that being said, you get two groups of people. There's the people that love bushcrafting and think prepping is dumb, and then vice versa. You get the people that say, well, why would I need to learn how to make fire? I have this lighter right here. I'm done. Like it's quick. Right. So, and the way I looked at it, I found merits in both of them. I was approached by a guy that owns a survival school in South Carolina that I went to. His name's Joshua. One of the best people ever. He's just a great dude. And he was all about prepping, and he was like, can you make a fire? And I said, well, sure. And he looked at me and he goes, can you do it when it counts? So what do you mean? He goes, all right, so you just pulled a family member out of a river. They had just fallen in. It's 50 degrees outside. You've got about 12 minutes to save their life before they're gone. And it's raining. Are you going to be able to start a fire and build a shelter in that time and save their life? I looked at him, I said, there's no way. That's not possible. And he kind of smiled and said, yeah, come out to my school. And so I did, and he taught me how to do it, and it was really neat. So as far as my experience with bushcrafting, I don't know much about foraging around here. New area, I don't know what to eat, so I have to learn that. But I can tell you how to build a shelter, an expedient shelter, and how to build a fire and boil a pot of water in about 12 minutes. All of those all together. So that's what I kind of focus on, and we'll do a quick overview on those. Where can bushcrafting actually be utilized? Well, anytime you're really outside, it's ideal. Hiking trips. Can't tell you how many times I either forgot to bring a lighter with me, or it's out of fuel, or just, hey, it's raining. This lighter is not working. This dryer lint with petroleum jelly isn't working. You know, it just didn't work. And then kind of had some fun with bug outs, Teotihuacan, oh my god, barbecue at the end. So, preparing for an outdoor adventure. This is where we kind of look into the whole outdoor survival. And there's a couple things that are really important. I did a lot of backpacking back east. I'm looking to start doing that again. But it's all about preparation. Where are you going? Finding out the elevation, the climate, the vegetation in the area. What's the weather going to be like? I'm not going to go hiking in shorts and a t-shirt in this weather. It's just setting up to fail. How long are you going? Kind of determines how much food and water you need. Always pack a little more than what you need. As far as clothing, you know, anyone hear about cotton kills?
Oh, yeah.
That's a phrase that I kind of agree with. Kind of. During the winter, cotton kills because if it gets wet, it does not help you at all. It actually cools you off, makes you cooler. And that's where wool comes in. Merino wool is probably the best because when it's cold and wet, it still produces heat and helps insulate you. So it's...
Is that a brand?
So merino wool, it's a type of sheep. Yes.
And the wool from that sheep.
Has antimicrobial properties and also keeps you warm.
Spell that. M-E-R-I-N-O. M-E-R-I-N-O.
Yes, sir.
If you're a backpacker or do any type of camping like that, you can get to know merino wool pretty well.
I've got some of their socks on right now.
I have their socks. I have
It's,
their base layer.
Yeah, the base layer is great. So there's a couple companies. There's Smart Wool. There's Darn Tough, which is probably my favorite. I mean, the socks are expensive, but they're...
If anyone's looking for the socks right now, I believe it is Costco.
Okay.
They have the merino wool winter socks. That they actually have them. It's like 4 pair for maybe $18.
Oh, that's a steal. They're antimicrobial. They wick water. They're magical. Like, I was kind of skeptical, saying $20 for a pair of socks? No way. Then I tried them and they work. So.
And they also don't get too hot.
Yeah.
So because you can wear them here, you can wear them in summer and it wouldn't bother you.
So it's.
Maybe not full August summer, but.
Yeah.
Who do you tell? So if you're going on a backpacking trip, especially solo, I always tell at least 2 people. And there are certain apps that you can use. I use All Trails, which you can actually share your location with a trusted associate. So I always have my wife on there, so she can actually look on her phone and see exactly where I am within about a 10-foot radius. So it's All Trails.
All Trails.
Yes. And they have a free version, and then they have a year version, which I think is $30.
My son and grandson and I are all on the same phone plan, so we share locations. So I know where they are, they know where I am all the time.
Perfect.
When I went out to Bushcraft Park, they knew where I was the whole time. So.
And I mean, that's great thinking ahead, especially if you're solo. It's ideal. Now, it does kind of fall apart when there isn't cell signal, but once it does receive any kind of signal, it will ping your new location as soon as possible. You know, a lot of the trails in the area, they have the ranger stations that you check in. I always highly recommend that. Let them know, hey, this is where I'm going, this is how long I'm going to go, this is when I'll be back, etc. And then I put the trail box. So usually if I'm going solo for a couple days, I'll actually put a trail box, which is just a little shoebox sized tote, underneath my car, and I'll let the ranger station know. And what I'll do is I'll take aluminum foil and take a towel, fold it up, put the aluminum foil on top, and then step on it so they can have my exact shoe print. And you put that in a waterproof tote, and so if you get lost and they send out their rescue teams, they know size 13 Merrill Moab shoe. Cool, we can track him because typically they have trained trackers on their teams.
When I was at Fuchsia and I was walking their trails, every morning before I left, I took a picture of myself, what I was wearing, and I sent it to my sister in Florida and my son, and with the caption that, you know, this is what I'm wearing today, and the idea was that if I went missing, the people searching for me would know what kind of clothing I was wearing, so they would look for a body with that kind of clothing, and that's me.
That's perfect.
Something anyway.
I mean, it's letting trusted associates know, or people, what's going on.
Explain that footprint again.
Sure. So I'm going to take a towel at my house,
Take a towel.
fold it over a couple times, just to give it a little bit of cushioning.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take a piece of aluminum foil,
Right.
and I'm just going to put it on top of the towel and step on it.
And then step on it.
And it's going to make a perfect imprint of my shoe.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to put that in a waterproof box, along with a note that explains, hey, this is the trail I'm going to be on, how long I'm going to be gone,
Got it.
what I'm wearing. Even a picture would be even better. Just so that, and I'm going to let the ranger or my contacts know, hey, I put a trail box underneath my vehicle, so that they don't have to try to open your car. They can just pull the box out and say, okay, so this is exactly what we're looking for, who this person is, where they're supposed to be at. Definitely narrows it down. So if there's any chance of rescue, it'll be pinpointed a lot faster. Let's see. So that was the trail box. What's recommended for bushcrafting? So one of the things that you'll see is that everyone has a different opinion on what the best fixed blade knife is. So as far as what I'd recommend is obviously a fixed blade knife. And we do that because a knife that you have to actually open has a point of breaking right at that hinge. If you ever need to put any pressure on it, it could snap. So fixed blade is the way to go. A sharp spine. Now the spine is actually the back portion of the knife, right here along the blade. And you want a 90-degree angle, and that's to start fires with. So we'll get into that a little bit more.
Is there, sorry to interrupt you, but is there a legal length or illegal length for a knife?
So I believe it's 5.5 inches. Don't quote me on it. I think it varies by state, but I think in Texas it's 5.5 inches. So, which, I mean, that's plenty of blade, especially for bushcrafting. A bag, always good to hold all your stuff instead of having to put it in pockets and then try to run around. Let's see, a single wall cup. So single wall cup, I know a lot of people are, right, a lot of people are big into having the Yeti cups that are insulated, double wall. Those are great for keeping things hot or cold, but if you're trying to heat something, that can explode, so it doesn't work out too well.
One of Len Stroud's episodes of Survivor Man, he had a plastic water bottle. He tied the top of the string and hung it, had a fire under it, and he said as long as the fire, when it touches the plastic, there's water in there, it won't melt.
Yeah.
And it showed, and if the water was boiling and the fire was touching it, and yeah, so that it works.
And plastic water bottles are great for survival situations. Personally, I'm just going to get, used it a couple times. This is what I just put next to a fire to boil water.
I've melted one.
You've melted one of these?
That exact same one.
Really?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I don't know. All I know is I was waiting for the fire for 30 minutes while I was watching it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Do not put next to fire for 30 minutes. That's impressive because I've taken this backpacking, used a regular jet boil.
Right, I normally use the thing on the propane.
Right. Yeah. Latest, I've just been putting this next to the fire and making instant coffee in the mornings just to keep those skills going. And because I have a problem with coffee. I love it too much.
To
So this is just a single walled cup. This one is made by Stanley, and it's what I take backpacking to, you know, cook all of my meals in. So if you guys want to,
Where did you get that?
Walmart.
REI also has it too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Amazon has it. They're like the whole cook set's like $20.
Right, because it also comes with 2 plastic cups that fit inside of it
Yes.
that you can use for like coffee or something like that. You cook everything inside that, and then you use those inside plastic cups for everything else.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend a single wall cup. It can just be a regular metal cup, just as long as it's not insulated, the double wall, because the heat and pressure will cause it to explode. Obviously, you don't want that. For me, a tarp, that's going to be the shelter that I'm using personally. It's the fastest way to get someone out of the elements. Tents are great, don't get me wrong, but they can either be heavy or expensive. It's kind of either you get a cheap heavy one or a light expensive one. So my way to combat that is I have a tarp, and you can make a variety of shelters with that. Will it be as great as a tent? Well, no, but you know, it's a trade-off just like everything else. Cordage, obviously that's important. Paracord, bank line, you know, what have you. Any kind of cordage is great. Ferro rod. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with ferro rods. It's you guys want to check these out. So it's called ferrocerium, and it is an alloy of metals that when combined with the striking of a piece of steel, i.e. a fixed blade knife, will cause sparks that are about 4,000 degrees. If you hit those sparks onto anything that's flammable, well, you've got a fire. I think each of those rods, you can get about, I've heard different stories, around 10,000 fires per each of those. And you can buy them online for $10 a piece. So,
How does it work? You strike them both at the same time?
yeah. Hey, come on in.
And then the tape on there, is there any significance for that?
So for me, the tape, I like to have a handle on it, just because normally they're just rods. Also, the tape can be used as kindling because it is a little flammable. Personally, I don't use that for that, but
Is it electrical tape?
duct tape.
Duct tape. Okay, you need duct tape.
So, like I said,
You strike them both together? Or?
no, you use a fixed blade knife,
Oh, I see, okay.
and you just. I have a video that I made for it, so it'll show you how to make fires with those.
Can you show us that at the end?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So this guy's name's Dave. Dave Canterbury. He is, from what I can tell, the end-all be-all when it comes to bushcrafting. You guys ever see that show, I think Discovery or National Geographic, Dual Survival? Dave was on that. He wasn't the guy that was walking around barefoot. He was the military guy that was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. He knows his stuff. So he has a couple expanded versions of what he thinks are necessary, and he calls them the 5 C's or the 10 C's. And so there you'll see, you know, the cutting tool, the combustion, the cover, container, cordage. And he goes further into it with the 10 C's, where it's, I think, candle, calories, compass, blah, blah, blah. I think the 5 C's are the most important, obviously. And so, you know, fixed blade knife, axe, these are what he recommends. Matches, I brought some Strike Anywhere survival matches. They're cool. I've used them a couple times, but you guys will see my preferred method shortly. Yeah, one of the things that I really like under cordage is to use a bungee cord. I hate tying knots. So at the bushcrafting school that I went to, they talked about knots for 2 hours. And it just right over my head. I can't understand. I mean, in Boy Scouts, I definitely didn't get the knot merit badge. I failed out of that little class. So what I found out is that if you keep bungee cords in fairly decent condition, you can hook those up to 2 trees and just save yourself a headache, at least for me. So I'll use bungee cords on a tarp with a couple stakes, and I can set up a shelter in 30 seconds, which when seconds count, it's the best thing to do. So, order of importance, shelter. So this is kind of in a situation where you pulled your best friend out of a freezing river and you need to save them time. You're going to pull them out and get them into shelter as soon as possible, get them out of the elements. Starting a fire, obviously important to warm them up. And as you're building that fire, then you can collect water and start boiling it, obviously for purification and to warm them up, because I guess warm water will be
Cold water.
Absolutely. And then food, and then self-rescue. And those are kind of, you can flip-flop those, because depending on your situation, if it's going to take 2 days to hike out of a spot, yeah, it might be nice to have food, but we're probably not going to starve to death. Might be better to get rescued before then. So you can kind of make a judgment there. Let's see, what else? Shelter. So have a couple pictures of tarp shelters. And this is not glamorous camping by any means, but a couple different ideas that you can use just for a $5 Harbor Freight tarp. Bungee cords are great.
I was gonna say there's your bungee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are these your hiking sticks on this one?
So yes, those are hiking sticks, hiking poles that are used, depending on how you have your setup. I typically go, and if I am going backpacking, I have hiking poles or trekking poles that can be used. But if not, you can still have the same effect by tying it to 2 trees. It's the same thing. As far as shelter, a poncho can work. It's not ideal, but you can squat down and fall asleep next to a tree. You can even, I've seen some crazy people put little candles inside the poncho to keep themselves warm. I wouldn't recommend it because I don't want to light myself on fire, but hey, to each their own. Wool blankets. I've seen people survive with using a wool blanket as their shelter. The same properties as the socks, where if it gets cold or if it gets wet, it'll still keep you warm. Personally, I'm not a fan, but to each their own. And then there's earthen natural structures. So Joshua, the guy that I learned a lot of my bushcrafting skills from, he lives in a teepee most of the year, out in South Carolina. But then every once in a while, he's like, that's not tough enough. It's not. So he builds a raised bed about a foot off the ground, and he sleeps in it, and he covers himself in leaves. It works. I don't like bugs that much, personally, so that's not going to be my go-to. It depends on how comfortable you are with the elements. I like to have a nice little barrier, typically a tarp, in between myself and the creepy crawlies or whatever. So that is an option. If you find a cave or you build a lean-to, great. That works. In a survival situation, I'm going to get over the fact that there are probably bugs crawling on me if I'm warm. So
Nothing else available, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, the black bear, not too happy with them. Fire. So this kind of gives you an idea of how I typically do this, and this is the way that was taught to me. So people do it different ways, but normally you want to gather all of the materials first. Hey!
Hello, everybody!
What's going on?
Sorry,
Good to see you.
I've been working.
That's okay, glad
It's
you made
working.
it.
You're making it. I've been getting some antennas.
Oh, you're cold.
I am.
Yeah, it's chilly out there.
Awesome. So we're actually just talking about starting fires.
Awesome.
So gathering and preparing the materials first, obviously sorting them by size. You don't want to try to just get a little spark and then throw a giant log on top of that. That won't work, obviously. So finding all of the materials that you need and then processing the kindling. So we can pass these around or take one and pass them around.
Right?
This is fat wood or fat lighter.
You can find that in the bush.
Yes. So if you have pine trees in your area, you can find fat wood. And typically, fat wood is actually the resin from dead pine trees. And if you ever see a pine tree that's dead, sometimes it's not falling over. It's still standing straight up even though there's nothing on top. And all of the sap will actually collect at the bottom. And then it will get hard and turn into a crystal. That is actually basically a petroleum project or product at that point. And highly flammable. Yeah. And so then all you have to do is process this little piece of wood and you're done. And you can actually find it if you go through the stumps that are still sticking up, knock it over and open it up, and then you can tap with your knife on it. And once you start hearing a pinging noise, that doesn't sound like wood actually hitting it. It's a very distinct noise. Yeah, plastic, I've heard metallic. Some people say it sounds glass-like. You know that it's something different.
Special part of the trunk? Is it the center? Is it the outside by the bark?
So normally, it really depends on how the tree, if it's fallen or if it's growing at an angle. But normally the center from what I've seen. I haven't tested it here. I don't have any dead pine trees on my property, so I can't.
I'm gonna look. You'll find pine trees around here if you go to Bastrop.
Yeah.
That's the reason why Bastrop has had so many fires. It's because it's all pine. Yeah.
And I have some pine trees on my property, but
They're healthy.
they survived the drought. So yeah, and I'll show you guys how to process that and how to make a fire. That when I tested it, I was at the bushcrafting school. Didn't sleep that night for some reason. I don't know.
Alcohol?
No, I didn't even drink.
Partying?
Lack of alcohol.
Yeah, I don't know. Or too much caffeine or something. So it was over a 3-day period, and they tested us at 11 o'clock at night on the second night, and it was in complete darkness, and we had to start these fires, and they had little water sprayers, and they were just spraying us constantly. Because yeah, it's great if it's nice and dry, all the kindling's dry, easy to start a fire. Well, they start spraying you down and the fire and your kindling and everything. Well, that's the great thing about fat lighter and fat wood is that it's basically all weather. It doesn't matter. So it was more of a psychological thing, I think, for us.
You could buy that also online, boxes of fat wood for your
Yeah.
fireplace to help get it started.
I think Tractor Supply has them.
Yeah.
So
Home Depot.
yeah, perfect. Water, obviously important. So, the collection points, the normal ones, streams, rivers, ponds, rain. Morning dew was one that caught a lot of people off guard. What you can actually do in the mornings, if you have a handkerchief, grab a bunch of dew off of tents, tarps, grass, plants, strain it into a cup, boil it. You can have your morning cup of coffee without having to go down to the river.
Or for that matter, dig a little hole, put a plastic with a little cap underneath.
Yeah, that can work as well. That kind of leads into leaf evaporation. You'll see a lot of people that'll put bags on leaves of plants, and the evaporation will cause an accumulation of water. That does take time, and if the wind blows, then and you don't have your bag attached, then you just wasted a bunch of energy. So, fruit and vegetation, rock crevices. Not so much around here, but you can find them, and you can find little ponds. As far as purification, my main rule is that boiling it is mandatory. UV purification is great when you find a water bottle, set it outside, let the sun hit it for 7 or 8 hours. That's great. I'm still boiling it. I have a Sawyer Mini water filter that I use for backpacking. Still boiling my water because nothing really truly kills 100% of everything, but boiling gets as close as you can. So try to boil it. Told you guys this was a quick presentation.
Slow down.
Food. So this is something that I wanted to put on here. This is the survival food pyramid. And it's basically what's the easiest thing to find, and then obviously you need more skill to get big game. So research your wild edibles. Don't eat anything that you don't know for certain what it is, because you could have a bad time. So
One thing that I was taught when I was a little girl, if something tastes bitter or really disgusting to you, that's a natural defense.
mm-hmm.
That means it's most likely
Yeah, if something tastes bad, it's probably awful for you.
I also heard that if you do decide that you need to eat something, maybe you were the one that showed it, just take a little bit of it and then wait, 10
Right,
hours
yes.
or something, just to see how
Yeah, you
your
wait a
effect
little
is
bit.
on it.
If you don't have any, if you're not throwing up or having other digestive issues, to be nice.
Right.
And then,
Absolutely.
Got a related question to that.
What's up?
Most of us probably have food in our house that we've been saving.
Yes.
Right? I opened a can of flour meal last night. That's 10 years old.
Okay.
I was gonna make some rolls. It had a terrible smell when I opened it up.
yeah,
Is that a sign of?
It's the oil in it,
Mm-hmm.
oil goes rancid, that's probably what it was. It may have been okay to eat, the flavor might have been off, but it's the oil.
Yeah, I know that flour normally you can, Mylar oxygen absorber it, or throw an oxygen absorber in it, and it can last for a year before it starts the taste starts becoming off. I think the best way to combat that is to actually use wheat berries, to store wheat berries and then grind your own flour. So it's
Yeah, well, they advertise this preparation food the last 35 years. And this was only 10 years old, and I opened it up and, oh, it was terrible.
I wonder with some of those businesses because how many people are actually trying the food?
There you go.
They're-
I've never opened
They
one.
were open.
And you haven't had a reason to.
Yeah.
And is that company going to be around in 35 years? Eh.
They'll give you your money back.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm gonna give them a call.
Were you gonna make us biscuits?
I was. I was gonna make cinnamon rolls out of it.
Oh, that's fun. So, I kind of glaze over food because in most typical outdoor survival situations, you're not going to starve to death in 3 days, in 5 days. It's not going to be fun. You're probably going to be a little cranky. I know after not eating for a couple days and me trying to start a fire, yeah, I'm going to be a little unhappy about that. So, and then rescue. So land navigation, obviously a map, a compass, a protractor is great. But the elephant in the room, if you don't find the training, you don't seek that out, it's not going to help that much.
and a protractor for navigation is different. It's not the map one.
Right.
It's different.
Yeah, it's not the half circle. It's actually a square. And having the training to recognize that.
Does somebody know the training? Somebody have that?
Well, so-
Kind of. I'm not an expert, but I
You
did.
could show us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should get.
Or,
together.
we could probably get Esteban to.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't mind.
We went to a land nav class, 2 or 3 weeks ago? And it was by an Army veteran that taught us land nav in a park. And it was eye-opening. I had no idea. I thought I could work my way around the compass, and yeah, I could, but just the skills that I learned from it were important.
The compass, what do you suggest would be, I guess, a decent compass?
So a lensatic compass, a lensatic is a type. I think it's LENSATIC. It's probably ideal. I use what's called an orienteering compass. It's like a cheaper version of it. It gets the job done. It's just not as easy to operate. So,
Not cheap, right?
so you can get compasses for around $20 a piece that work.
The ones they recommend, though, if I was looking at it, it was
About $50.
okay.
Where you actually have a peephole that you can actually look and see easier. With mine, I had to do this and kind of stare through it. So it's
This one has a nice, fairly affordable one for $17.
there you go. And you just have to make sure that you get the correct hemisphere as far as a compass, because you get the southern one, obviously it's going to throw you way off, about 180 degrees. So, and you have to practice with it. And that's one of the recurring themes that I talk about, especially in this, is that you have to keep practicing those things. Same with first aid, having the equipment. And the most typically used equipment in these kind of situations are splints, tourniquets, dressings, and bandages. But also you have to get the training for it.
Yeah.
And
Another thing.
you hit an artery, you have less than 90 seconds before you're dead. That's not cool. So being able to put on a tourniquet really quick is very important. Having the training, one-handed, absolutely. Carrying a tourniquet, and splints.
Mine's still in the package, my tourniquet, at the bottom of my bed.
Got to get you to carry them. But also splints. How many people have been hiking and seen someone with a sprained ankle? I see it almost every time that I go backpacking. Somebody rolls their ankle and they don't have a splint. Well, let's say you're solo backpacking 20 miles. About mile 8, you roll your ankle. And now you have to hobble 8 miles back, and that's going to take how much longer? So having the equipment, but also training with it's very important.
One of the good sources of training for that is, if you've ever heard of the CDRT program,
Mm-hmm.
the second day, or at least I don't even know who did ours, was all first aid.
Oh, yeah.
All, tourniquets, splinting, how to help carry someone away,
Mhm.
all that. So
Take a cert training.
and it's free.
Yeah, cert training's great.
I actually know a guy, he's a councilman at Chabanel. I spoke to him, he'd be more than happy to come in and train us for free.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That would be
I'm gonna
amazing.
talk to you about that today.
Yeah, no, that would be huge. We'll talk about that.
Tim, you've got some training you could do for us too, right?
Yes, so I've had training with Navy SEAL medic and an Army medic, an old crew, who beat me up while he was training. But I'll be more than happy to help y'all build your first aid kits, your trauma kits, and do it on the cheap, with substitutes as opposed to high-end military equipment. As far as training specifically, I'm not certified yet. I should be TCCC certified in a couple of months.
Perfect.
And then I'll be more than happy to train on that. I can do a once over on what to do, but I can't provide training.
Sounds like we have a subject matter expert. I know, Jade, you've been through some in the military.
Right, so we're actually doing that on next month, on the 10th, but you can do it next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, we
Whenever.
can do it once a year or once every 6 months or something.
We need to practice.
Oh, yeah.
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 And I'll bring my stuff. I went to one in Waco in April through Refuge Medical. It was a 2-day course where they did blue gun simulations, all kinds of crazy things. Casovac, all crazy stuff. But the important thing is just to find the training, to seek out the people that know the skills, to vet them, to say, hey, do they know what they're talking about, or is this just kind of a money-making venture?
Well, if you know nothing, anything helps.
That's true, unless they send you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, true.
That's the kind of have to have a little discernment with that. But you're right. Signal equipment. Obviously having any of those are important. A lot of people glaze over cell phones. A lot of times you will get intermittent signal that you can set a text message to send once you get signal, so that you throw it in your pack, and when it gets a bar, it'll send it out. So that's something a lot of people don't think of. They see their phone and they're like, oh, no signal, and they just don't think of it.
You're saying make the text, send it, and then just put it in the bag.
Yeah. So that's always an option.
There was also a case where a little girl was lost, and she was found at night, I think 3 days later, from the light from her iPod, actually. It wasn't a cell phone, but yeah, it's a good signal.
It is. It's huge. And of course, having the survival mindset. I mean, knowing that you're going to get out of this, you're going to make it. That does a lot for the morale. There was an acronym that somebody told me. It was, if you ever get lost in a situation, it's STOP. And it literally stands for stand or stop, think about it, observe, and then plan. My favorite thing to tell people is that if you are lost and you're starting to feel like the panic, the overwhelm from it, empty your pockets.
Do it.
Empty your pockets. So you're going to sit there and start pulling out, all of these things. And it's going to let you take stock of what you actually have on you, things that you might have forgotten that you have that could be useful. But also it takes your mind off the situation for a moment and brings you from here down a little bit. And so then you're able to breathe and actually think about the situation in a logical manner instead of panicking and making mistakes. So empty your pockets, and it can kind of get your mind off of it. And you can go, oh, what do you know? I happen to have a fixed blade knife right here. Perfect. Because I took that survival training.
You make it sound easy. I was lost in the Canadian bush
Oh my God.
when I was 16.
Okay.
And I had a 270 Remington.
Okay.